He felt something was wrong as soon as he stepped into the room. Queen Camilla wasn't looking over the will of the late queen. She was changing it, crossing out lines and adding her own lines, all with a lawyer who wasn't even supposed to be there. That's when the royal guard stepped up and put down the original version that Queen Elizabeth had sealed and given to him. It showed everything, word for word. He tore up the documents she was rewriting when she wouldn't stop, right in front of her. Before I show you how one guard kept the crown from being quietly revised, make sure you're subscribed and have the bell on. Also, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. What you're about to see isn't just a guess. It's the line that separates inheritance from thievery. This is how Windsor Castle settles down when the rituals are over. The light of the day fades through those old mullioned windows, turning everything amber. You can almost hear the stones breathe. That's when the place stops working and starts remembering. When the visitors leave and the press photographers put away their cameras, only the people who live there will be left with the weight of history. Sergeant Callum Rock knows that emotion better than most people. He had been guarding royalty for 20 years and learning their secrets for twice as long. At 47, he could tell the difference between a ceremony and a catastrophe. He stood in one of those hidden corners of the castle tonight, right outside Queen Elizabeth's private study. Not the fancy state chambers with their gold-leafed furniture and oil paintings of long-dead kings. Instead, it was the modest room behind the West Wing library where she used to write letters by hand till her fingers hurt. There were no chains or big locks on the study since the funeral. Instead, it was closed with respect. King Charles only went in when he had to, and he always had witnesses with him. The room still had a slight smell of the lavender hand cream she liked and the ink she liked to use for writing letters. Royal blue from a firm that has had the royal warrant since 1894. Rock wasn't meant to be here tonight. Officially, his shift was over at 6, but there weren't enough people on the duty roster for internal security. There were budget cuts, and most of the senior guards were moved to work at future state events. He raised his hand right away when he had the chance to volunteer for evening archive duty. He should have been home by now, with his feet up and a good pint, watching the football highlights. Instead, he was keeping guard over empty hallways and the ghosts of talks he shouldn't have heard. That's when he heard the sound of feet. Sharp heels on parquet floors are too loud for personnel and too fast for the typical nightly cleaning rounds. He turned silently and adjusted the ceremonial sash across his frigid stream guard tunic. He felt the familiar constriction in his chest that signaled trouble was coming, whether he wanted it or not. Queen Camilla came around the corner like she owned the area, which she did. But the way she moved tonight was different. No one said hello or even nodded to him. A man Roar didn't know followed her. He was dressed like a civilian and had 2 leather briefcases that appeared like they had been used in colonial offices. The visitor looked down like someone who has been ordered not to talk to the staff. They didn't say a word as they marched directly to the locked study. Camilla didn't knock. She didn't stop. She just put her hand on the brass doorknob, which hadn't turned in 2 years, and stepped in like she was getting her reading glasses. The door clicked shut behind them. Rock stood there for a minute, listening to the quiet that came after. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like the air is heavy, as before a storm. He had spent too many years in situations where making the wrong choice meant someone wouldn't come home, so his instincts were starting to tell him things he couldn't ignore. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. This wasn't a ceremony. This was something completely different. Then a memory came to him, so clear and piercing. It could have happened yesterday instead of over 2 years ago. It was March, just a few weeks before Elizabeth would start to become worse. It was a gloomy, sleepy afternoon, which is what English springs are known for, and the Queen, who was 95 at the time but still sharp enough to cut glass, had shown up at his corridor station without any fuss. "Sergeant Rock," she'd said in that voice that could command armies or console grandchildren, "walk with me." He'd followed her through corridors visitors seldom saw, past portraits of monarchs whose names most people had forgotten until they reached her private study. She stood by the window in her riding coat, still wearing gloves, and looked out at the lawn where gardeners were planting something that would bloom long after she was gone. "Do you know the difference between inheritance and stewardship?" she questioned without turning around. "I think so, Mom. Most people don't," she said, finally looking at him. "They think the crown owns things, but we only hold them like trustees. Everything goes through our hands, but nothing really belongs to us." That's when she took an envelope out of the desk drawer. Heavy cream paper sealed with red wax that has her personal crest on it. His name was written in that unique way across the front, erect, compacted, and inexpensive. the handwriting of someone who had signed 1,000 state documents and learned not to waste time. "I'm giving this to you," she continued, holding the envelope as if it held something delicate that shouldn't be opened unless there was a question about her last intentions. He accepted it without question, but she wasn't done. "Legacy has a way of making people want to change things," she added gently. "If anyone, no matter who they are or what their title is, tries to quietly change history after I'm gone, you'll know what to do." "Mom," he'd replied carefully and with respect. "I'm a soldier, not a lawyer." Her grin was sad, knowing, and almost like a prophecy. "That's exactly why I'm trusting you with this." The envelope had been in his personal safe for almost 2 years, hidden under service medals and family photos. It had collected the kind of dust that only settles on things you hope you'll never need. He had almost convinced himself that it was merely the paranoid behavior of an elderly lady who had seen too much history to trust anyone totally. Now that he could hear muffled sounds coming from behind that closed door, he was starting to realize that paranoia and preparation can look quite similar at times. Rock walked through Windsor's halls like a soldier going back to the battlefield. Not right away. People noticed the speed, yet there was a purposeful calm that came from years of going through situations where your footfall may mean the difference between finishing a task and dying. But first, he had to check on something that had been bothering him since he saw Camilla's friend with those ancient briefcases. He went out of his way to go to the security office, which was a small chamber behind the main stairs. There, digital logs kept track of every door, key card, and approved admission into the castle. Davis, a young corporal who was on duty, looked up from his crossword problem. "Evening, Sergeant. Thought your shift ended hours ago." "Couldn't sleep," Rock answered, which wasn't quite true. "Do you mind if I look at the West Wing's access logs? I thought I heard something moving earlier." Davis opened the system on his screen. There was a chronology of entries on the screen, with each one having a timestamp and a permission code. Rock looked over the list until he discovered something that made his blood run cold. 7 unauthorized entrances, 7 distinct chambers, all made in the last 3 hours with manual override codes that shouldn't have been there. Not just the Queen's study, the exclusive archive, the ceremonial vault, and even the restricted manuscript room where she kept her letters to international leaders. This wasn't thievery for the sake of it. This was planned theft, Davis said. "Jesus," when he saw the pattern. "Should I set off a security alarm?" Rock answered gently. "Not yet, but keep an eye on things. If anyone else tries to get into those areas tonight, call me right away." The Queen's special legal chamber was not just any room. It was where she stored the papers that were too private to be filed in public. Draft wills, private letters, and personal bequests that required to be kept somewhere between official records and family trust. After she died, the chamber was sealed according to archive rules. To open it again, both the current Queen and the Lord President of the Privy Council had to give their permission. Rock would have looked at the documentation. There was always paperwork to do. Memos went around the palace protection team. If anyone, even family members, went into places that were off limits. It was standard security procedure, the kind of thing that kept institutions running and stopped anyone from getting in without permission, just like he was seeing. But now that he knew about the other rooms, this didn't feel like family business anymore. It felt more like a planned attack on the Crown's most secret papers. He stood just outside the door, close enough to hear but far enough away that he couldn't be seen. A small brass stopper held the door open, which was a thoughtless detail that made it seem if the person inside didn't expect to be found. Voices might be heard inside the still air. Camilla said, "Get rid of this whole section." Her voice was serious but strained. "The language about national stewardship is too limiting." "That's Clause 9C, the man said. His voice was deliberate and clear, like a lawyer's. "Are you sure you want to get rid of it completely? It only talks about the status of the royal collection." "I want it gone," she stated in a monotone voice. Elizabeth was always more interested in keeping things than in using them. These things belonged to the family, so they should be treated that way. Papers rustled, and a pen scratched across parchment. "What does this clause about Balmoral mean?" the man questioned. "The part about keeping the estate for the nation forever." "Change it," Camilla said right away. "Something about subject to the discretion of the royal household would be more appropriate, more flexible." Rock felt his jaw get stiff. He had gone to Balmoral. He had seen the bronze plaque in the chapel, which staff members polished every morning as if it were scripture. "May this land stay free of politics and inheritance." Elizabeth's own words cut into metal that was meant to live longer than the people who read them. "Your Majesty," said Miles Denham, the man, with some hesitation. "I should say that Sir Jeremy's early work on the other papers has raised some red flags." Camilla's voice got sharper. What kinds of worries? The Royal Archive Office has been asking questions about access codes, about who authorized entry to the sealed chambers. Sir Jeremy thinks we may have limited time before they notice the pattern. Sir Jeremy. Roar's recollection came back to him. Sir Jeremy Whitmore, the Queen's former private secretary, had been quietly let go 3 months after the burial, officially for personal reasons, but there had been whispers regarding improper access to secret material. How much time? Camilla asked. Days, not weeks. That's why I'm saying we should focus on the most important changes, like the Balmoral Clause and the collection trust provisions. We could put off the bigger changes for now. No, Camilla answered firmly. We do this right or not at all. Add a clause to the personal effects section that lets heirlooms be given out at will, without needing to be verified by someone outside the family. The red tape around these things is ridiculous. Denham stopped for a moment, and Roar could hear him flipping through the pages. What about the charitable provisions? Clause 15 sets up a number of permanent trusts. Lower them, she responded without hesitation. Elizabeth was too generous. Cut back on the amounts and put the savings into family discretionary funds. That would have an impact on dozens of groups. The Literacy Foundation alone gets. I'm not interested in maintaining Elizabeth's pet charities forever, Camilla said bitterly. The Crown has current responsibilities that take precedence over sentiment. The sound of additional scratching, which was hesitant yet willing. Your Majesty, Denham replied slowly. These changes would be very different from the original document that was filed with the Privy Council. If there's ever an audit, she said, there won't be an audit if the revised version becomes the official record. That's exactly what's going to happen. Sir Jeremy has already made the filing corrections. Rock pushed himself closer to the wall. This wasn't just changing documents. It was a planned plot that involved many persons, many rooms, and what sounded like planned fraud. We should complete our work, Camilla continued. Sir Jeremy will take care of the archive changes tomorrow night. By the end of the week, there will be only one version of the Queen's will. The witnesses to the original are old, far away, or sure enough that their memories might not be perfect, she said in a coldly practical way. Time can make people doubt what they think they remember. Raw had heard enough. This wasn't grief-motivated impulse or family argument regarding inheritance. People who knew exactly how to mess with institutional memory planned this theft of a deceased woman's legacy. Raw had heard enough. This wasn't making things clearer or up to date. This was revision with intent. Those who stood to gain from the alterations systematically changed a dead woman's wishes. He stepped away from the door and walked back to his room, moving quietly and efficiently, like someone who had just gone from watching to doing. The envelope was still there when he got back. It was hidden in the little safe under a pile of official papers and personal history. He performed the combination without shaking. Left 4, right back 1 notch. The safe opened with a metallic whisper displaying the cream-colored envelope with its unbroken seal. He delicately cracked the wax, knowing that whatever was within had been waiting 2 years until this very time. There were 2 things, a short letter on royal stationery and a little card with the Queen's personal seal on it. The letter said, "To whom it may concern. The Privy Council office has properly filed the final form of my will, and it is safe in the Royal Archives under succession protocol. 3 checks must be on any document that says it represents my wishes. 1. My original signature and date, witnessed and validated. 1. Transmission through Privy Council lines that was recorded. 1 is comparing archival documents with registry identification. Any change to this protocol, no matter who it comes from, what relationship it has to the protocol, or what authority it claims, is to be considered void and challenged. A verified copy is still in the study bookcase, on the 3rd shelf, with a green binding that says E2R. You have the authority to submit it when constitutional clarity is needed. Chayo, and we trust your judgment. Elizabeth Archer." Roar let the letter fall, and he felt a wave of comprehension wash over him like cold water. She didn't merely think this might happen. She was ready for it. He walked up to the bookcase and found the green-bound folio right where she said it would be. There were 12 pages of legal writing inside, all perfectly formatted. All of the clauses are numbered and cross-referenced. No notes written by hand. No vague wording about discretionary distribution or household preferences. Just the clear, uncompromising language of someone who knew how important it is to be clear when you're gone. He put the folio in a document carrier and sealed it in the right way. Not because he wanted to fight, but because the most important fights are the ones you hope you'll never have to have. When Rock came back to the courtroom, he didn't say anything. He just walked in like it was still his job to be there. Which, according to the letter in his pocket, it was. Camilla and Denham were now sitting next to each other, their heads close together over what looked like a very different manuscript. There were a few pages spread out on the table, and the careful changes on them made it clear that this wasn't their first time editing. Denham looked up first. "Sergeant, we're in the middle of something very sensitive." Rock put the green-bound folio on the table next to their work. Not too aggressively, yet firmly enough that it can't be ignored. He continued in a calm voice, "This version has Her Majesty's verified signature, proper witness confirmations, and Privy Council registry numbers. The document you're changing doesn't." Camilla stared at the folio, and then at him. Something chilly flashed behind her eyes. She said, "I didn't know that palace guards were experts in inheritance law." "No, Mom," Roar said. "But the Queen herself told me to act when things didn't add up." Denham uncomfortably cleared his throat. "We were using notes from Her Majesty's personal staff. They were notes she had planned to make before she died." Rock added, "Her clarifications are there," pointing to the official folio. "They are filed, witnessed, and sealed according to Crown protocol. What you're working on isn't a clarification, it's a replacement." Camilla's face became hard. "You're saying I forged it." "Mom, I'm just saying that the official version is out there, and it's not the same as the one you're making." She slowly got up, and her composure started to break a little at the edges. "You don't know what Elizabeth and I talked about, what she promised, or what she meant," Roar remarked. "With all due respect, intentions don't trump legal documents, not when they're filed correctly. I am the Queen Consort," she added, making sure to say each phrase precisely. "These are family matters. The crown doesn't belong to the family, Mom. It belongs to the country." The only sound in the room for a while was the gentle tick of an old clock on the mantelpiece. Camilla then picked up the updated manuscript and gathered the pages as if she were getting ready to go with them. Roar did something then. He didn't grab the papers or make a big deal out of it. He just reached across the table, picked up the changed pages, and tore them in half with the same calm skill he had used to defuse bombs. The boom bounced off the walls like a gunshot. Camilla stopped in her tracks and stared at the ripped pieces with a look that was a mix of disbelief and anger. Denham took a step back, and all of a sudden, he looked like a man who had just discovered he was too close to something that could blow up. Camilla remarked in a very hushed voice, "You've just destroyed a legal document." "No, Mom," Roar said, putting the ripped-up pieces neatly on the table. "I've destroyed an illegal change to a legal document. The real one is right here." He grabbed his cuff and pressed a small black button that was hidden behind the fabric. A faint bell rang out from the hallway. Not an alarm, simply a formal notice that would call the right people. Level 1 of the protocol. A constitutional issue that needs to be dealt with right away. Camilla's eyes were on fire. "You've just made a private family matter public." "Mom," Rock murmured gently. "It was already there." The aftermath came quickly and professionally, as it does in settings where rules have been honed over hundreds of years. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Morrison from the Metropolitan Police's Royal Protection Unit was the first to arrive, not King Charles. She walked in with the kind of calm authority that made it seem like she had seen enough constitutional crises to know the difference between a scandal and a real threat. 2 forensic experts with evidence-gathering kits followed her. "Sergeant Rock," Morrison said in a voice that was clear and efficient, as if he didn't have time for niceties. "Hi, I'm DCI Morrison. We got your protocol level 1 trigger. What exactly are we dealing with?" Rock pointed to the ripped-up papers and the official folder. "Systematic changes to the late Queen's will, ma'am. Multiple unauthorized entries in the archives. A conspiracy involving at least 3 people." Morrison's eyes become sharper. 3 people. Queen Camilla, Mr. Denham here, and a Sir Jeremy Whitmore, who seems to be in charge of changing documents. Whitmore, the former private secretary. Morrison's face got darker. "We've been looking into him for 3 months. We thought he might have tampered with the archive, but we couldn't find any direct proof." Camilla finally spoke up. "This is crazy. I'm being treated like a common criminal because of family paperwork." Morrison turned to approach her with professional civility that was almost scarier than being rude. "Your Majesty, right now we're just gathering evidence and figuring out what happened. Can I ask how you got into this sealed room? Nobody needs to give me permission to go into my own home." "Mom, you really do need permission to get into restricted archives. The chambers you went to tonight are protected by the Crown Estate Security Act. Even family members need the right clearance." Morrison's forensic team was already taking pictures of the ripped papers, the official folio, and the things in Denham's briefcases. One of them looked up with interest. "Mom, these forgery tools are high-tech. They include a professional-grade document scanner, a parchment matcher, and even a thermal aging device that makes new ink look old." "Those are Mr. Denham's," Camilla answered hastily. Denham's face turned white. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, you asked for Mr. Denham," Morrison said. "Please don't say anything until we can get you the right legal help." That's when the sound of footsteps coming closer indicated the entrance of the person everyone had been waiting for. King Charles III stood at the doorway like a personification of judgment. He wasn't wearing royal clothes, but the look on his face made it clear that the weight of the crown had just become very real, very rapidly. Sir Alaric Finch, the royal legal secretary, followed him, looking glum. Then two people from the Privy Council office came in with sealed document cases and tablets. Finally, Lord Patterson, the Lord Chamberlain, showed up, which meant that this had reached the highest echelons of palace management. Charles looked over the scene carefully, the ripped papers, the evidence gathering, and his wife standing still with barely restrained rage. Then he said, "Brief me." While the forensic team kept working, Morrison gave a short synopsis. Charles listened without saying a word, and his face grew more and more serious. 7 chambers, he finally questioned. "Yes, sir. All accessed using override codes that were supposedly disabled after Her late Majesty's death and Sir Jeremy's involvement. We have recorded conversations that put him in charge of replacing archives," Rohr stated, pulling out a small digital recorder from his pocket. Audio proof of the plan to swap out authentic documents for fake ones. Charles's eyes got a little bigger. "Did you record this?" "Sir, standing orders from Her late Majesty said that any constitutional irregularities should be written down in case they led to legal action." Finch looked over both documents, the approved version and the torn-up changes, with the careful attention of someone who had spent decades making sure that legal language meant what it said. He told Charles, "The registry numbers match our archived records. The official version was filed 3 months before Her Majesty's death, and it was properly witnessed and sealed. The altered version," he held up one of the shredded parts, "has at least 17 major changes to inheritance law, estate distribution, and charitable obligations." Lord Patterson cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, this is the worst violation of crown succession rules in modern history. What does this mean?" Charles added in a low voice. "I get what this means." He stared at Camilla, and for the first time since he walked into the room, he seemed to be losing his cool. Not rage, but something deeper. Disappointment mingled with the awful realization that certain betrayals can't be forgiven since they hurt too much to admit. He asked, "Were you going to tell me?" "What do you want me to tell you?" she asked. But her defiance wasn't as strong as it used to be. "That you were changing my mother's will, that you were taking money from charities she had supported for decades, that you were going to sell Balmoral. I was protecting our family's interests by destroying her legacy." His voice stayed calm, but the words were full of judgment. "By turning the monarchy into a personal inheritance plan." Camilla's mask eventually broke all the way. "She was selfish, Charles. Selfish and controlling. Even after she died, she was trying to tell people what to do and how to live with the results." It felt like something important was shattering when there was silence. Morrison moved forward. "Your Majesty, we need to broaden this investigation. If Sir Jeremy has been coordinating archive substitutions, we could be looking at widespread fraud on several royal estates." Charles nodded once, slowly. "I'll do whatever you need. You have my full support. What about—" Morrison looked at Camilla with a knowing look. Charles took a big breath. The kind of man who thinks about things for a long time before making a choice that will affect many others. He finally answered, "The crown must be protected from all threats, no matter where they come from." Camilla glanced at her husband with an expression that could have been realization, not of forgiveness, but of what would happen next. "You're picking them over me," she stated in a low voice. "I am choosing duty over preference," he said. "The same choice every king and queen makes. The same choice my mother made every day she ruled." Rohr went back to his normal spot outside the royal study later that night, after the authorities had left and the papers had been properly stored. Same job, same duties, but something important had changed. He had crossed a boundary that most guards never even go close to, the border between following orders and making decisions that would change history. He had fought with someone who was higher up than him in every manner possible. He had done it only because a dead woman trusted him, and he knew what duty really meant. Rohr stood guard over hallways that had seen the birth and fall of dynasties as the castle nestled into its nightly stillness. Queen Elizabeth's real wishes were kept in a safe place, under climate-controlled glass, where they couldn't be changed or reinterpreted. Not because they were perfect, but because they were the last ones. One guard had decided to let the dead speak for themselves in the space between what people wanted the past to say and what it really meant. A young intern from the palace came up to him about midnight, looking curious. "Sir," the child questioned nervously, "is what they're saying about the will true?" Roar maintained an eye on the hallway in front of him, looking for hazards that might never come. He added softly, "The crown has a lot of treasures, but the best ones can't be stolen. They can only be earned." The intern thought about it for a bit before moving on. Roar stayed where he was while the old stones of Windsor kept watch over him. In the main house, people were talking about things that would change relationships and set new limits. People were making choices that will affect many generations to come. But in this quiet hallway outside the Queen's study, the past was safe. Sometimes that's all a guard can do. This is what I want to know immediately. Was it ethical for Sergeant Rock to destroy those papers even if a Queen consort was holding them? What do you think about King Charles? Should he have stood up for his wife? Or is service to the crown more important than loyalty to family? Most importantly, who really owns the legacy of a dead person? Their family or the organization they worked for? Leave your opinions in the comments below. We read all of them. Hit the like button right now if you think some things are more important than titles. Make sure you subscribe with alerts on, because tomorrow we're looking into another case where royal rules got in the way of personal goals and rules won. Let someone who thinks royal guards are simply for show know that we all know better now. There is another fight waiting for you on the screen right now. Click that and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same spot on Guard Watch. Thanks for tuning in. Sometimes the most significant fights happen without anyone knowing.